All the judges good?
I'm good.
Alright, cool. I affirm resolve the United States ought to become party to the United States Convention of the Law of the Sea. Need to prove one of the resolutional claims to win because the order in the resolution left no data using the logical sentences are connected, which is true when at least one of the constituent sentences are true. Definition Collins says the United States is a country in North America. Cambridge says that ought to is usage of necessary dictionary says resolve is firmly determined, and I am negative argument presupposes the resolution true because it begins with the claim the resolution does X and then says that X is bad. Resolve because the ET indicates the past tense means the resolution has already happened, so I've met my burden. Now affirm ethics is universal and objective, otherwise you can't know what our obligations are. So meaning 05 individually without their own behavior and enforcement all set objectives to without such laws so arbitrary that citizens will be unable to avoid punishment. The laws we sufficiently clear to provide reasonable opportunity to understand conduct, and beliefs are not moral, they are evolutionary advantageous. Moral beliefs are epistemically unjustified. Machuca 18, natural selections forge capacities develop moral judgment does not require them morally be true, only that is evolutionary advantageous, evolutionary and processes that are reliable and adapted to human terms to be disposed to make moral judgment regardless of evidence, and an individual's morally confident in the desires that are supplemented by the sense of requirement that strengthens his motivation. Moral beliefs are epistemically unjustified, and no one will ever agree. Each person has their own understanding of the right and wrong into infinity. Moral beliefs are pragmatically unjustified. Genesis 16, serve no morality responsive moral to a personal taste to being who want to say what is right for them. Moral truth bearing clear rebellion against philosophical impulse itself. There's no correct moral principle. Everything is based on what the individual desires, and legal contracts are justified. They allow contingent obligations in the absence of right and wrong. Darwin 2K, right and wrong to follow the sky rules to appeal to everyone, appeals to all the principles of morals with some sort of agreement. See the price of jewels I agree to my pocket, I agree to something for your parent, that you do something for me, or going to agree on the walls of conditional intention. If you do X, I'll do Y, and if I do Y, you do X. Your agreement will count as creating an obligation for you. Rule following the rule requires another rule to determine how it is to be followed. The original rule, however, is infinitely regressive because we also need a rule to determine how to define the rules and so on. Guiding morality and inviolable contract is the only way to avoid skepticism, so dispels out the exact permissible and prohibited aspects of a moral rule, prevents abstract interpretations and enforcement. Thus, the standards consistent with legal obligations. Legal obligations are created through entering an agreement. Failing to uphold agreements about coercion of the illegal obligation destroys the order upon which the state is founded, which is self-defeating. Man 23, legal agreements create a binding obligation. The parties cannot back with the legal obligation. Those circumstances were fraudulent, creates an obligation to do something illegal. Members of police time with the coercion, they must fulfill approving standards for a body which creates a legal social order by reminding the people that they make it good on their promises of affecting contracts, and legal obligations are constituent for the state's identity. Renzo 22, the political communities that are jointly committed by the uphold this institution obligated by expecting the joint commitments to the obligations are moral in nature, but relations come with a special responsibilities, membership, and role and obligations. The recognition of identity is constituted by obligations by making sense of the making sense of who we are. Constitution is the best way to achieve normative and normative claims because they are not optional. Cost of fathers 11. The constitutive standard differs from other standards in terms of the activity. We can play chess without aiming to enjoy, but you can't play chess without aiming to achieve a checkmate. Constitutive answer and non-optional standards and sources. The standard applies to, in virtue of the fact that something is an action. Refer additionally into textuality. The term United States ought to implies a legal obligation. Refer because it's a term of art. SCOTUS. It is agreed upon the United States ought to has been allowed to show a continuing obligation to an original agreement on which the contract for the construction of the cause. B. The state should prefer founded obligations that are fundamental over arbitrary. United States courts, U.S. Constitution, and the nation's fundamental law. Constitution ought to be preferred with the will of legislators. Judges ought to be governed by the fact they ought to regulate their decisions by the fundamental law rather than by those which are not fundamental. The rule of laws are principle under which all are accountable. Become party to is legal. Inside justice. And D. Party refers to the state that it's supposed to consent to be bound in the form of ratification of parties legally bound by the treating steps. Obligations definitionally outweighs the burden of the rest established through text, even if the negligence of the state, what the state morally should do, doesn't deny the obligation. That definition is the way in which we prep. It dictates the bounds of the relation refer. Definitions textually outweighs it. Textually determines how we prep into we preface on the topic internally to every argument. This makes it what we mean to subject or everything that we argument make it subject to definitions. And other frameworks are competitive. Legal obligations exist independently. Moral obligations close 11. Ethical norms are in agreement with the principle, whereas the legal norms are in regards to their contents and norms too many at the same time. They will be ethical, but there are legal norms which we have no relevance to ethics. The TJS refer to reportability research in our model, prepare students for college and law school, which teach legitimate legal obligations through definitions because of the strongest link to the rule. The other frameworks that advantages big schools, which is card blocks, pushing out small school barriers. We keep up with the analytic focused framework and resolvability. Other frameworks force you to resolve questions of morality, whereas determining the legal obligation matter legal understanding outweighs because the legitimacy of standards which truth can never be reached by moral claim. When I see offense, any form of international laws and legal obligation, international law defines legal responsibilities of states and encompasses the wide range of issues that are used to force the conduct of war, and international law specifically binds the U.S. Union. Close hook 14. United States obligated under international law to comply with the UNCLOS despite never ratified. The United States has incurred the international legal obligations that are contrary to the object and purpose of the treaty. The United States is not permitted to act in any way that would undermine the central provisions, and UNCLOS doesn't require anything beyond compliance to existing environmental laws, which the U.S. already follows. 18. Legal experts have concluded that UNCLOS does not actually require the United States to adhere to any environmental laws or regulations other than its own. The underview, the role of the ballot is to vote for the debate of the best proves the truth of faulty resolution. Prefer for grab choosing has more ground than either rule of ballots and Celeste if amounts of arguments range to argumentations talking most of the present how can fill it be necessity. All statements assert implicitly true value. If I say that I small bias assumes something is true, I small bias creates a double need they assert the truth with their innate truth they implicitly accept that it's true, or they do not, which means that you should presume their answer is false. See textuality, five dictionaries defines two affirms to prove true and negate time the truth between the soldier treating of the judges both the resolution true the falsity that outweighs and totally clear the rules verified. All absolutes don't negate, they only prove the absence and all this is further better not the resolution totally false. NCA 12, the affirmative arguments the resolution is true, the negative arguments the resolution is false. Presumption principally affirm, other just by neutral actions are true, the water statements are true proven false or totally name you believe you wouldn't be able to start assuring the reasoning, so you have to question that reason. Logic, you can't say that P and not P are both wrong for you, so we can operate in a world we show trust anything, otherwise no decision can be made. Presuming obligation, quality statements better be supererogatory than failing obligation. Negation theory, everything requires prohibition or proving the absent that you affirm. Fairness outweighs one is self-defeating. Every single argument that they make actually concedes the authority of fairness because they assume that the judge will evaluate fairly, be it a meta constraint, their introduction of anything in this anything in this round assumes the validity of fairness. Otherwise, you can hack against it, and it outweighs the K once an epistemic indict. Even if they introduce arguments that surround things other than fairness, they assume that they're evaluated in a fair way. Second is proximity. The ballot can only resolve questions of fairness. They cannot resolve things like microaggressions or racism that already exist in the status quo. And it's a performative contradiction since you have adhered to things like disclosure and flipping and speech times, which means that it's the internal link to everything. No negative accessibility. It should be subject to true testing. One is real world violence. For example, at UPenn, I was kicked out of the tournament for stealing a lollipop, but the dean of UPenn did not use true testing as a framework, which meant that I was falsely accused, which is necessarily bad. It also sets bad precedent for norming and call culture, in which you could just read calls about a text I sent 2 years ago. 1 error 3 is legit and drop the beta. It should be the highest layer in this round. Others would say infinite 1 and C abuse.
Yep. Okay. You said everything?
Yeah.
Okay. The second part in the offense section explaining how unclosed we have responsibility to uphold it was the warrant.
Yeah, sure. The argument is that the United States is obligated under all international law. UNCLOS is a form of international law, which means the United States is obligated to comply to it insofar as it's a member of the
I guess
UN.
I'm just confused. Why does that require ratification?
Sure. The argument is that ratification is good because it poses a binding legal obligation, and the argument is that this is why the obligation exists at all. Like, the affirmative just says that it's we prove the resolution true because ratification, officially, finalizes the obligation.
None of your offense is necessarily reliant on, the ratification being binding. It's said based on us being consistent with legal obligations. Well, why isn't just following UNCLOS without joining sufficient?
So, the first thing is that the argument is that we are saying that it is a good idea or it is true that the United States become party to the treaty because becoming party is uniquely a legal definition, which is what we have defined. That means that even though the United States is obligated to comply with international law, the argument is that specifically becoming party makes it a legal obligation, which our syllogism says is good.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything on the underview. You said no accessibility, real world violence, bad precedent for norming, and then 1 error theory, right? Those are the last ones?
There's also fairness justification.
The stuff about that, I got all that. Okay,
cool.
Last thing, you made claims about truth testing. What defines what the affirmative must defend?
What do you mean, what defines what?
As in, you define affirm as prove something true, but nothing mentions the resolution. It's March, April. We should be on the March, April topic. By that definition, you should negate automatically.
Wait, what? The argument is just that, it's beyond, what the topic is. The argument
I get just confused. Where have you defined what part of your definitions or anything they've implicated defines what you must prove true?
The argument is that we prove the resolution true.
But why?
The actual text of the roll of the ballot is vote for the band that best proves the truth.
Okay, but there's no warrant for that. It's better.
The resolution.
I want to ask, besides the card above the UNCLOS card, we should be held to international obligations. What's the warrant?
The argument is that international law is a legal responsibility for all UN member states, which therefore means it's a legal obligation.
Sure, I guess it's just the US is...
the United States is a member of the UN.
Yeah, sure. How do you solve all treaties broadly, or the US is already party to the UN and
I think the first problem is what do you mean solve? The app is not consequentialist. It doesn't aim to solve anything.
Yeah, I guess I'm just confused. What part of it?
It's binding.
What part of it means that UNCLOS is key because it seems generic to every UN treaty ever.
It is. It's just saying that UNCLOS is an instance of it, in which case the resolution is true. There's no solving anything. It's not key compared to anything. It's just true.
That's fine. Who does the plan?
They're first of all not a plan. The argument is that this is just a truth claim. This is in the context of a state, if that is what you're asking. It is what the United States ought to do.
Sure.
We have defined the United States.
Yeah, for sure. That's fine. I'm gonna start prep. It's your birthday, man.
It sure is. Happy birthday. Thank you. Happy to spend it waking up at 6 a.m. Cheers the state.
Alright, 350. Let's see, TOC, Octas. Alright, sending it. Orders. Oh, sorry, good for the order.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 off in the case.
What's the order on case?
Let me just send it because my
Yeah, no
word
worries.
is like bugging, sorry. Okay, it's in the speech bubble. Or sorry, 6 off.
6.
My bad. Orders underview.
Underview,
Framing.
framing.
Some of the actual race, I guess just go straight down from framing.
Okay.
And then the offers.
Just top down.
Yeah, the underview first.
Oh, underneath.
Looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
Alright, anyone already?
Head-Royce constructive, no 18, Head-Royce, whatever possible to get anything else outside that content, restart the debate, shifts from legal precision, just like aggressive, unpredictable shifts from limits, competition theory, and play keyboard, check pigs, drop the debater, distorts future abuse to your nerves, too late to start from scratch, reasonability, software, and self-serving, fighting intervention, organizing logical, predict the argument, and incentivizing being abused. Next off, skip it, interrupt, as specified, implementing agreements of enclosed, then defendant, and deleted text on Wednesday, they didn't entirely change the topic, Bruce, on the 24 in the floating agreements, fill the gaps in the appropriate influence part, a lot of the government ocean, deep sea bounding it, and some of the guys say the third BB day treat implement, growing provisions, vote clash, back enables robust debates, or plans, details, it's inevitable to verify the case of competition for the Wednesday press, shifting foreground like D10, trade, oil, and new last B6, national American government, the District of Columbia, also abolished the government of the 50 states in the United States territories. The government also become part of the United Nations Convention of Law, the sea, implements equivalent protections through unitary state laws, and realizes consequences to democracy, law against the to provide the government would be better responsible for subdivision, not better, state government the root of free trust, democracy, regulation, taxation, we have necessary terms, first fragmentation, fragmented, inconsistent legal obligations across the legislature to make the body with the vast framework impossible, Reynolds 97 towards law and universality and statute of completely against with laws, terms, states, and may be reasonably applied, the disaster consequences create disarray. Second, universal justice, different applications of law across judicial systems, guarantees violations, independently different democracy solves extras. Group of one, there's little evidence to security policy, not extras, that's a factor of democracy, tangential to the administration, computer project affairs, group of agents of accuracy, democracy, paying gas, like superior towards support of democracy, results of deliberative experiments, voters unlikely to tolerate GCRs. GCRs terms, the United States has a legal obligation to prevent extinction. 5 frames, first preemptive constitution says that they'll do so. They promote general welfare, thus the government should act for the well-being of the people. Second, the Fifth Amendment, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, protects and prevents extinction. 3, public trust doctrine, the government holds resources like air, water, and wildlife in trust for the public and future generations. Governments have the duty not to destroy essential natural resources. 4 is Article 2, Section 2 says the President's commander in chief responsible for national defense and preventing death now competes. First, sexually, Legosky 25 without states in the United States when he chance the unitary republic is. Chapter therefore refers to central or national government. Second, semantic states is plural, is federal, is Bellia 22. The other constitution refers to state for refers to either to continue existence as ever often rights. To the federal government to abolish it straightforward. Prefer these introduces regress and police separates and kills and clash. Second, ethics are asserting need to prevent extinction. Power 15 to 3 philosophy here is awful, but the reasonable degree on whatever review which does support reduce spread out being to plain or limited whatever consequences the ontologist, which is to say the world cases drop people live long high quality life, and the plausible version of the ontology thinks they're good from an impartial view, that's implies some reason to reduce risk cuts. The card there, conduct is good, encourages testing, next flex and quote. It's just logical. Next off, the United States ought to abide by the provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Follow every other international agreement besides the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. They have reasons. Following is key, not accession. As per cross-text, next off, the debate is not neutral. Pejorative rhetorical trust frame imperative socially inferior critics say of axiological validation. Q22. The ability to make towards the power space. Committed superiority by identical least, the poverty subjugation, stable value threat. Axiologically validate the footers one had skill and resources to transform the word the best noble the word with the identical superiority represented. If pejorative language is humiliating truth, the defectiveness, medical truth, with all it is able to be able to play. Economic rights to subdue distinct bodies. Their humanist foundation refers to rationality, reason, and university constructs disability as inferior. Mission 19. The individual medical well-being is later described the Newport through displacements and European notion, martial arts, becomes justification, differentiate, and integrated as embodiment, fantasy, non-normative embodiment of the ones between humanity, the identification, biological superior basis, the card. Their language of legal obligations undergirded by the negative ontology of disability, no link terms, remedies, and reinscribe the power domination, Campbell 01, activist place, federally
equal body of the equalization provided the remedy subtext of disability negative ontology remains substantially unchanged, foregrounded by the negative ontology can be written into the impact and the fact of understanding of ontology individual tech, and freedom of strategy of social justice can continual reiteration of defective reality through disability allows us to be able to subject to escape. The one he sees, actually, skip that, negate for the comic, actually, no, the ones he treaties are hollow legalistic practices that reflect the responsibility of Greek and team rights, and can shape everything language through the wall of glass, which generated a fruitful approach to discuss language and legal documents and practices, which green form of life universal perception as Castillo itself often proved in fact disability in order to convert century cross within legal approach to the events as oppressive power central put disabilities in their rights. Negate for the comic frame only self-reflects back to the asked assumptions, free up potentialities no longer treat disabilities less than the finger over 23 convertible nodes are able and privileged bodies are disabled people realize profession producing narrow potentialities influence already redacted make disability less than you take granted assumptions or not, and then the comic frame to self-relation for recognize the absolute frames to which facts go back formulating antagonism and emphasizing inclusion not cross over the able to work to demand the activity one bit the wrong about to take with the position to decide this reducing exclusion of God on top of long intro within the ways of torpor assumptions to DA's first responsibility to use non-actualized ideal frames out there to away balance scholarship and here access how ways precondition to base existence case will inevitably exist and they have infinite perhaps second-year period magically an educator consistently comes prior to ever for working paradigms are geared to an educational object hateful language referendum even to educating good people. 3 includes factors and competitors and sets resolve or often any educated properties beginning your perspective get debates competitive drives work a form of double exclusion get debates agents typically playing an opposite game and give parts of other debates many self-reflect on the activity and say point of back to back perspective that the other one advantage disabled bodies are often recruited doesn't hold the power to effect change and the script practices that have been normalized students should consider pause in order to self-reflection on the able to distributions. Now, even if they're right, go to case. No, yes, tune our arguments, justify the response, and give 1 AR which always shifts. Now, counter-interviews compared with world's first jurisdiction. That rhetoric is being an example of in-round violence done on framework means, done on the framework of the case, which means you need to default to a second inclusion to the lead case, and it was slurs. Some teams can't catch all priorities, offense, outweighs, drops. As you know, exclusion above. 3 is infinitely regressive and doesn't make any sense logically, takes away any possible skills. In front of a true testing fails, and it's the LE handbook. No, but advice we determine true or false, neither debate should be held to standard to prove that debate can prove complete validity and validity of the resolution. If the ground creates shallow clash of bad skills, continuatism affirms by the overview necessity and textuality solely means we need to prove something true, not the resolution. It's also April done on cross-text. Now, even if the right proves alone solves, they're wrong. Now, fairness. First, no paradox. We don't want fair evaluation. That's the reason that we prepped you. Also, if you knew the framework of authentication, the answer is that meta-constraint is tautological. Also, meta-constraint, I must be able to breathe during debate rounds. We can't do anything about it. Now, in proximity, vote them down to solve, which would be on the K and the 2 and R. If they make those arguments, they never explain how we're less proximate to either way. It's a question of models. Perfcon is not. There's no warrant for how we formally contradict. So they'll be new if they do, but no warrant for why it's bad. It's an even if question, not okay. Not that type of okay. Now, no, they say accessibility. No, because simply regressive. Your interpretation is worse because people are not able to engage in true testing arguments. If they can't catch all a priori, they say bad precedent is inevitable because people are not going to follow the rules. There's no are not going to follow the rules 100% of the time. Proven by the fact that some judges go against jurisdiction. 1 AR theory is not the highest layer. Proven by the fact that team and non-team that we weren't able to create arguments had to throw all at the wall. Now, framing and/or legal definitions that way guide topic research and the lit on the alt definition. Permissibility negates how frames presumption. First, trichotomy obligation is the same for permissibility and prohibition. The first one is their job. A no force when prohibition means no act. Even if you can't do the abass, don't until they prove a must. Burns out frames out every other argument. B odd means has morally right to do particularly thing that's called excludes their legal definition. Textuality weights it's like topic be shifting from words, and the rest was done by them. Second, logic, if not, need to explain why arguments need warrants before consideration. Absent that would best infinite individual assertion that solves every warrant that isn't already answered by turning the board not into their offense. Now, the result if you were not verifiable, they determined I'm more resolved than you, which is why I'm louder. We don't presume the app to be true. We presume it to be false and prove that you must presume it false since you have to prove the app is good. Now, predetermined proper resolution isn't predetermined true by fiat negates because the status quo is predetermined the app didn't happen. Paraphrasing resolved enables evidence ethics and mischaracterization which kills fairness is the reason why they shouldn't lose ethics. Universal is wrong since sometimes people disagree, but it can still be not. New link, Mitchell 1950s, non-normative embodiment about embody the evidence made to satiation by the logic of spirit racing for society possibly in a form of disability. Cut out disability, ableism problematizes the logic of evolution in the first place, which in turn linkers their offense and get default to rejecting racism. Ableism, Samuel's 18 racism is a more easy for them to adopt anti-racism. Fully remote, we think the awful interpretation racism is not reasonable per se for side and suicide proof by this time to clear the novel of the screen. They overlooks obvious problems. Cut the card. Yeah, rule following and arbitrary regress takes out contracts since there's no reason to join a contract nor follow it. McMahon is wrong. Relies on no coercion. Back to the question of offense. Continue to say wrong. Textuality is silly, all is about steel court cases, and they don't say legal foundational obligations. They justify excluding Iowa, which they can't explicitly concede.
Okay. Good for cross.
Yes.
Okay. I'll start. 1. Anything extempt in the 1 and C?
No. Well, I mean, there were like analytics that I guess $100.
Okay. What were they?
A lot. I don't want to go through every single one.
Are any of them reasons to auto-negate?
I mean, we turned your out reports, so I guess those ones.
Okay,
if you
that's
necessary.
fine. Let's talk about, I guess, status of the K alt.
We can kick it, but it's not floating there.
Is it condo or dispositional?
Condo.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about the, I guess, what's the explicit net benefit to the counter plan?
A couple. The internal, then the straight term to your advantage, and then extinction bad.
Okay, extinction bad, it's fine.
I think it's like the democracy caused extinction. Extinction violates your framing and is independently bad based off of meta ethical uncertainty. and then the straight term.
Sure. The truth testing fails. You say that we can't prove absolute truth or falsity. Why does that mean that proving truth or falsity is bad? Like the roll is worded as who best proves truth or falsity.
Sure,
You can't prove absolute truth. Why does that mean we reject it?
Well, okay, two implications. First, it means that it's impossible for your roll to valid to be actualized because it forces some type of judge intervention, which you're trying to avoid, since there's no way for them to be 100% sure of anything. Second of all, it flips your constitutivism offense because this is from the NDCA, and they say truth testing is impossible in its absolute form.
Okay.
Or
Again,
NDCA.
even if it's not possible, why does that mean that we can't aim to prove the best truth?
Because it forces judge intervention, like I said.
Okay, why is comparative worlds not judge interventionist?
I mean, it's significantly less because the
How?
judge. What do you mean how? Because the judge is comparing two worlds with a probability based off what the debater said.
Why is that less interventionist?
What do you mean?
Why is it less interventionist to compare worlds as opposed to compare the validity of ethical truth?
Yeah, it's exactly as I'm saying. If truth testing is what we're using, then the judge has to go from a 60% probability to 100% or inflate impacts in order to assign 100% truth, which is impossible as per NSCA rules.
That's fine. What is the comic frame? What is the alternative prescribed? Is it an action? Is it a mindset?
Okay, well, it's a couple things. It's, first of all, more like a mindset, if that's what you're asking. Instead of the, I forget what it's called, the proceduralist frame, which is what we're adopting when we choose to adopt a framework, interpret truth testing, etc. We should instead adopt a comic frame, which is more holistic and adopts different ways of viewing the resolution. We think that that's necessarily key to amend the activity. A number of warrants. First, enables for us to rethink our relationship to ableism, the resolution, etc. Second of all, it lets us question already taken for granted assumptions, because otherwise we just rely on procedure going forward.
Does any individual do the alt?
We just think it would be a good idea to do it.
A good idea for what is the alternative? What does the manifestation of the alt look like?
I guess it's pre-fiat, so we would imagine that.
It's pre-fiat.
Yes.
So it's something that the debaters do. It's something that happens in round.
I mean, yeah.
What exactly is it?
It's a movement away from your proceduralist frame.
So it's just rejecting the app, or
no,
just it's
not at all. It's your
saying
framework,
rejecting the
offense, truth testing, etc. The way that you reinscribe these ableist hierarchies.
Okay, sure. I'll take Brett. What is the highest layer for this debate?
Well, we mean argument reference, we should confirm one here too.
T before. Skip the second off, but you read everything else.
Yeah, just a second off.
Okay. 42 seconds left. Order's gonna be, it's gonna be underview.
1 sec.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Underview.
Yeah, underview, the top of the aff, a new off, and the off's in order.
New off.
When you say top, you have to mean just like framing straight down. Like
Yeah, like framing off.
Sure.
And then off in order.
Can you say the order because I don't have the doc open? Actually, wait, I do have the doc open. And or.
Yeah, it's like the and or, it's like the shells, the counter plans, like, and then the critique.
Okay, sorry, let me just create flows for those. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
Can you repeat where the new off is?
It's like
Aftercase?
between the aff and the off.
Cool, I'm good.
Is there doc?
No.
I'm good.
Alright, cool. Underview going for true testing, I'm going for the T point that all FPs don't negate because they don't prove that the app is false, but they prove the app is a theoretically alternative that's theoretically better. They mishandle it. Their only arguments that truth fails because like you can't prove absolute truth. But one of the questions whether we best prove the truth of falsity of the resolution, which means that all I have to do is win comparative worlds to win that alternative FPs don't negate. The NSGA 12 evidence at best is a walk between the two. But the argument is that the burden of the affirmative arguments the resolution is true, which means that it outweighs. They've made arguments for a burden arguments are uniquely the most important. It takes everything out. I have to answer the comparative world stuff. They make the sort of comparative world stuff the counter that we have to use jurisdiction, but judge jurisdiction flips affirmative. The argument is that you are only obligated to vote in the text of the resolution. There are more interventions, which means their model is uniquely worse because it's impossible to weigh between impacts, and it's also infinitely unpredictable because they're infinite world of ballots. And they say that teams cannot catch every a priori one. This is proven wrong by your in-round performance because you were able to play the a prioris down. They did not turn the a prioris since they were equally as resolved, which means that at best it's defense, and that we presume the app false. I prove the app true. I'm not going for the a prioris, but it means they don't have unique offense. They say the necessity and textuality don't mean that we have to prove the resolution true, but our argument is that proximity outweighs because of the burden provided to you in the piece of evidence that we've read that the alternate axes means they don't negate. Now the fairness outweighs stuff. I don't need to win it as long as I'm winning unique offense on other shells. The case proper, they are behind on it. They didn't do any line by line. Once again, the argument, the top level problem is that they cannot solve for the fact that the ethics are inherently incorrect. The Savigno factums, they are wrong in their answers to it. They assume that the ethics are universalizable. Our argument is that ethics cannot be, which means that we need to look to legal obligations. They say there's such thing as disagreement. This is just fighting the Machuca evidence, but the point that our syllogism solves that only legal obligations solve because they're constitutive. They've dropped that constitutivism outweighs. They've also dropped they're behind the rule following argument that following any rule requires another rule to determine it. But the only way to have a universal constitutive rule through legal obligations is the rule following paradox. Is reason to vote affirmative because which is why the standard must be consistent with legal obligations. Otherwise, we cannot spell out what action to take, which means that you automatically presume affirmative and legal obligations are uniquely good. They say the McMahon evidence is vague, but our argument under Narvison is that people are obligated because contracts are mutual as opposed to
any sort of ethical obligation, which means that it precedes everything. They've dropped that the United States ought to is a term of art, and the terms of art outweigh, which means you should prefer the SCOTUS evidence, which will also be an argument which you will cross-apply to T. It definitionally outweighs. Even if they've answered textuality, we're going for definition. The burden of the resolution is still established through text in the first place. The offense, they have dropped that international obligations outweigh, which is the UN evidence, which is also and they've also dropped the hook evidence, is that international law specifically binds the United States to include in the first place. The new off interpretation, the negative defense off case based on that question, the representation, one is they must defend it unconditionally, one is tokenization, let them use minority literature for the sake of the ballot and put their struggles in the back burner while they feel they're using it strategically. Second is the internally to norm setting, teaches debaters bad, portable skills, they can just take arguments that they're losing, that's a whiteness dissent, it lets people commodify resistance strategies for the sake of their shock value, and it's a representational contradiction. You can cross-apply paradigms now. The T argument, counter-interpretation, and/or means I can choose one or the other. One is topic within our definition is definitionally accurate. There's an inter-app condo is solved by predictability. You can predict one or the other. There's only two things. It's also solved by predicting things like counterpoints and picks, prefer, or enter for innovation. Grant us the RBI. RBIs are good. It solves the time skew. It solves for time skew, which is uniquely more reciprocal, and it's not illogical because it makes theory a risk issue. Otherwise, incentivizes you spamming numerous frivolous opts. The third off, counter-interpretation. The app need not spec. If they defend it, an app is a statement of value. This assumes that the app is a policy action, but the app gets deontological claims without specking because of one that's bad for philosophical education because it means that the app can misrepresent Phil. The sort of fourth off, the permutation to both establish the government and prove that the app is true. That all apps don't negate argument takes it out. It proves that they have not won, that the affirmative is false, which means that and winning the truth affirmative doesn't matter. And solvency does that you can't solve the question of ethical disagreement. The sort of preamble stuff. I'm turning the preamble argument. International obligations outweigh, which is cited in the UN evidence. Now the critique which answers like the sort of fifth off of a permutation to the app. The critique property they say that the debate is not neutral and team reality everything is bad. One, we have not made any appeals to ideal theory. If their question, it's rather a question of legal theory in the first place. They say that 180 treaties are hollow, but we'll take out the alternative one. We can cross by that all axes don't negate because if we prove the resolution true means we've met our resolutional burden. And also their argument about rhetorical assumptions. One, you should just legal assumptions because the definition that we've extended.
Okay, 350. No. orders the critique.
That's it.
I don't know what you're staring at me. Sorry. Orders the critique, the future archaeologic process counterclaim, the underview, and then framing, or like just substance of the
Critique, process, counterclaim, underview. Okay.
Well, what did you say after the interview?
The substance, like edit offense, edit framing, whatever. Like wherever you
Whatever.
wherever
Okay, whatever.
Just whatever.
I'm good.
Okay. You good? Okay. Kick the all perms or test of competition. We don't need to win any axiological claims because ableism is an intrinsic bad. Two framing questions. First, they can see the card from case, which says that ableism must be rejected under any ethical framework because it's intrinsic bad. It makes it impossible for people to actualize the benefits of debate, which means insofar as they are correct or win the debate, it was only because they have caused inbound violence made it impossible for us to answer. Secondly, it means that you need to negate automatically because they've conceded all for framework offense. Continuativism, outframes offense, which I'll do below. Now, the story of the tune-art is framework. Our interpretation is the rhetorical assumptions matter and are a reason to negate. There are three arguments that will frame the battle for the neg. First, debate matters. If you win, the debate has some impact on the way that we view the world. It's best to avoid ableist tendencies within it. Second, the battle solves claims. You need to be 100% sure you change things. It's an ethical blackmail that causes exhaustion by demanding endlessly persuasion from disabled teams that ways. And third, the research was ableist. The very defense of a model where extinction can outweigh rest. It's our responsibility to negate, which trades out any possibility for the 2AR. Now, I'm going to do two framing questions, which means that all players all of their offense. First, the engagement stuff I did above means that any reason they win the debate is only because they made it impossible for us to be able to engage them. Second of all, we have to constituent policy which was trade conceded. Extend the Tab Room 24 card. It says it's your obligation to prevent ableism, racism, and hateful speech in the debate space as a whole, wherever possible. That means insofar as they win through testing, it outperforms theirs and outweighs their offense because we've made arguments about why it comes first. They said themselves through constitutivism and jurisdiction outweigh because it's what controls what the judge is able to do. Otherwise, judge intervention takes out the debater's hands. That means it goes our way and outframes any other offense. Now, along hypothetical our scenarios to outweigh committing grievances in here. So it's like psychologically pathologizing research as long as he has a good idea, zeros, fairness, or any other pre-testing offense because case will exist for raising the bar for holding them responsible and pretending like they don't cause inaccessible exhaustion turn. Accessibility outweighs dropped is the biggest actualized harm, unfair, and in terms of impacts faster than the inverse can be true. Debate benefits are impossible to access. We have no energy to stake here, so exhaustion by their model itself is linked. It starts at 100. Every warrant above is flagged in the 1C. None radically answers to hold the line. Now, I'll extend the link which went straight conceded. Legal obligations of the framework or rhetorical obligation makes it impossible for disabled people to be able to engage in the debate space. First is exhaustion. Means that disabled people are constantly excluded from legal obligation, constantly excluded from the state, proven by things proven by rhetoric throughout legal obligations of the Constitution, which make it impossible for them to engage. Insofar as the treaty is good, that's literally irrelevant when they conceded it. Second of all, is the contingent of all offense. They drop 1C2, takes out their framework insert. First, your role. The judge is paradigmatically an educator, not a fair adjudicator. Some instances of unethical constitutively comes first. Violating this jurisdictional rule is maximally unfair. Teams prep, assuming judges are educators, that's an intervention to shift out of your role, which nullifies the purpose of debate, outframes truth testing, and the offense they've chosen to go for because what you were able to evaluate in the first place comes prior to any substance of the debate space. Second, solvency. Regardless of the consequences, you must punish a team for violating speech times or taking 10 minutes of prep. Ableist frames must similarly be treated procedurally. Now, reject any sort of other offense. 0-1-year explanation for why fairness, clash, or truth testing outweigh means you must do our offense. You must evaluate our offense first. Their model functionally excludes links to rest, which means ableist assumptions are never questioned. Another dishad which went dropped, which ensures teams internalize eugenics. Thus, teams prefer the counter interpretation evaluate the absent object of research. That means link means it's sufficient to negate. Now, the second framing argument, the battle solves. Golden rule was above and proves that you don't need to be 100% sure that they solve ableism. The risk that debate safe sensitivities means you must do whatever you can in order to make sure that they won't read these sort of arguments in the future. In fact, requiring certainty is exhausting, which is worse than being slightly unfair. Reject defense. Even if the battle can solve, you should pretend like it does to punish ableist practices and implement with teams are the best behavior, which is competitive disincentives. Now, thing number 3 is the link. We've already won that their model itself is the reason blues fit the apps beyond bad because of that. Extend the treaties link. I'll do this one too. The very concession of treaties is founded on discourse of legal rights and codes presumed to be universal, which ignores disability. It's Zero's case because they dropped that this approach, quote, has proven ineffective. It also proves that they cement a model of oppressive power that dissolves ableism. That's Greco. Now, go straight to the line by line. They say it's not made to ideal theory. First, it's infinitely regressive. Makes that they can always fiat out of it. Same way you wouldn't let an app say perfect fiat allows them to get out of every dissad counterclaim, etc. You should not do the same for them because it makes it impossible for us to hold them to the representational claims. Second of all, we've read links for why the representations are bad, which precedes any claims about their theory. Insofar as we win treaties bad, etc. means you go our way. Third of all, we've made an indictment of their framework interpretation, which they've chosen to extend on truth testing. Means that insofar as they're right, insofar as we're right that creates ableism, you can negate even without this. And fourth of all, it's simply regressive. Not made a warrant for out of voice based on being an ideal theory. It's just an assertion. So they need to explain this in the 2R. It'll be brand new. It should be straight from your flow. Be the courage to sandbagging. We don't get a 3 in R, so don't give them the opportunity to do so. Now, they say treaties bad is wrong. It takes out the all. It's a claim without a warrant. Even if it's true, treaties is bad is 100% true. Hundreds of empirics have proven, and link debate means it goes our way independently. They've got given no reason why treaties are good, which means that there's only a risk of the link. Now, they say advocacies don't negate. It doesn't mean anything when they've conceded our framework interpretation and the constitutivism offense under it, which means even if we haven't presented an advocacy, you can still negate under our framework interpretation, which is not an alternative advocacy, but rather an alternative paradigm to evaluate the debate. Again, you can read their cards from the 1AC. They're about alternative advocacies against and affirmative, not framework interpretations. They say args about rhetoric fail and legal assumptions fail because, again, this is a claim without a warrant. They had no time when they got to us. It was overtime. She was struck from your flow beats and purges sandbagging. But even then, we read a ton of offense above, which clarifies that we've not made a claim broadly about legal obligations, but instead about about legal and legality, but rather legal obligations to the affirmative defendant and their treaties. Now, concede firm do both on the future RP counterclaim, just the test of competition, no offense on spec or on spec or the advantage. Go to the new off. First framework for either weighing the plan or the 1AC's impact framing. Neither are interpretable links to the 1AC. Second doesn't justify any offense and get infinite effect to unconditionally advocate the plan if we're inconsistent. Concede a double turn. 3 gateway issue where even if not okay with an all, either reject the ask to embrace the end of to embrace the framework interp or vote affirmative. We've called into question the 1AC's rhetoric, which come prior for arbitrators. They set the rules after the 1AC, which means it's possible for us to keep prior. They concede that they get no money or 3 because it's anything aggressive and they tune our responses because they're not able to be accountable. 5 because they shift out of it. 5 reciprocity. We've only read they read forgotten arguments with arguments why it's bad, which means that it's key to kind of inclusion. And so far as we win the aggression or around violence occurred, then we have to throw everything at the wall in order to respond. Now, go to comparative worlds. For comparative worlds, answers both the new off and truth testing offense. They dropped the inclusion offense. The warrant wasn't just people will not be able to catch a priori. It was also that enables for them to say slurs or bad things under their interpretation. Outframes their offense because it means that people aren't able to respond to their arguments, which means insofar as their interpretation is bad, it means it's possible. Their only response is that it's proven by the fact that I was able to respond. No, it's a question about models, which you said yourself impact turns it because it makes it impossible for people to engage under their model. Now, the one thing they went for was this D sub point, literally irrelevant when they concede all of our arguments for why it's a framework K and not at all. The rest of it is, constitutivism affirms outweighs none.
Alright, okay. I have
It was like 40 something seconds.
Yeah, it was like 49 seconds. I'll start that now.
Do you have a Wi-Fi that works, Bryce?
Yes, the hotel.
Okay, I need your help logging in.
What?
The honors or which one?
Yeah. And then you click on the promotional code.
Wait, did Head-Royce leave? Yeah. Good question.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, it was really hot in here. I need to go.
Yeah, that's valid.
It's the premium 25.
I guess, did you make an argument for, is disability the highest layer?
We made framing arguments for how the judge should evaluate issues like disability. So
okay, yeah, valid.
we also made arguments for like disabilities like an intrinsic bad, which I think could be
Okay.
the same.
The order is topicality. Everyone good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Wait, just to be clear, what's the name of the flow? What's the...
T and or.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Different names.
Like Nilesh, right? No, alright. I'm good.
Head-Royce gave a great 2-R off the dock, but the problem was that he did not answer the one important argument, which was the RVI I'm going for on the T shell. It outweighs everything. I'm going for first the counter-interpretation that and/or means I get to choose one or the other. The top of the issue is that regardless to whether Head-Royce wins a paradigmatic justification for how you evaluate substance, we were going to go for procedurals outweigh. The only thing that they have done to constrain procedurals is the argument that I don't get 1 AR3, but RVIs are not 1 AR3. Rather, it's a response to 1 and C theory, which means that if I'm winning a risk with the counter-interpret, it's enough for you to vote me up because they have justified drop the debater and reading this sort of counter-interpretation underneath drop the debater, it means that I get to hijack all of their offense. They have not justified why theory is not a reason to drop the debater, other than the fact that ableism outweighs in the first place. I'm going for 2 arguments. I made 2 justifications. The one is topic literature that our definition is dictionarily accurate, which is good for the interpretation, but also AFCONDO is solved by predictability and it's good for innovation. Now, these arguments can be extrapolated in 2 ways. One, it justifies why our counter-interpretation is winning, because obviously they didn't discuss topicality in the first place, but also this can be cross-applied and can be uniquely good for ableism. They make arguments this can be uniquely good for ableism, which is also where we're going to justify the RVI. There's two things. One is that argument innovation is uniquely good for an ableist paradigm. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit of a new contextualization, but it means that we are able to. It means that the app is able to do more things, approach like an ableist critique in different ways, which is uniquely better for things like education, which they've said is important. RVIs are good. They drop both of the arguments that it solves for time skew. This is uniquely where it's important for ableism. Time skew is bad. It allows you to crowd out the one error with numerous privileged shells, which is exactly what you did by reading things like ableism at the very bottom and then reading a bunch of BS that I had to deal with, so that I couldn't get to the case soon enough. This should be your tiebreaker argument. I've obviously won the RVIs are good. They did not extend no RVIs. They've only extended no one error theory, which means that I'm winning the RVIs are offensive. The only thing I need to do is win that it outframes like their sort of paradigmatic nonsense. The argument is that time skew is a reason why RVIs are necessarily good to check back ableism. They've also dropped the reciprocity warrant that says that theory should be a risk issue because it would disincentivize you from reading these things in the future, which means that if the ballot is key, that if the ballot is like key for ableist norms, that also means that this is key to check back ableist norms. They have not put any terminal defense on it, and I have not kicked out of it, and they have not said that RVIs are uniquely bad, which means that I'm winning the counter, I'm winning the RVI. Now I have to weigh against everything else. All of their arguments were contextual to truth testing. They have said that truth testing is a paradigm, that the judge is an educator. One, if the judge is an educator, that concedes the debate to us, because it means that you should be held accountable for every single argument you make. If the judge, even if they win that the ableism outweighs, it's a question of substance, right? Drop the debater to deter things like future abuse. It's a question of procedurals. They have not done weighing. There's sort of been no weighing in this round because all the weighing that they have done is on the substantive level. You should prefer topicality. Topicality is the highest layer since it's a question of norming, and they have not, which could sort of circumvents the offense coming out of the 2NR, because the 2NR is all a question of norming, but we do norming on the meta level because it's an interpretation that you ought to follow, and they have not extended paradigm issues. Also, the RVI is dropped, which means that if there's a risk that I'm winning a weighing claim, just gut check it and vote affirmative.